For a very long time, the true story behind the killing of hundreds of Hindus was cleverly papered over. Viewers, in fact, the targeting killing was celebrated. Its perpetrators called freedom fighters and martyrs. We are talking about the Moplah Rebellion. That happened in 1921. Its 100th centenary is being marked with great fanfare. It was an uprising of Muslim tenants against British rulers and Hindu landlords. The rebellion went on for several months, leaving thousands dead. Several luminaries of those times, including Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Annie Besant, have not just detailed but condemned the horrors unleashed upon the Hindus. Now, viewers, the record is finally being put straight. The Indian Council for Historical Research has decided that 387 so-called Moplah martyrs, their names are to be removed from the dictionary of martyrs of India's freedom struggle. But this timely revision of the historical account is being condemned by the left as an act of Hindutva revisionism, of Hindu supremacism, an act of desecration and intolerance. Viewers, that really is how the binary is being put out. Now listen closely to how a CPI MP and the Kerala Assembly Speaker, MB Rajesh, not just eulogizes the mastermind of the murderous attack, but also compares him to Bhagat Singh. Listen to this.
Variamkunnath Kunhamed Haji. Bhagat Singhinu സമാനമാണ് അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ സ്ഥാനം എന്ന് ഞാൻ കരുതുന്നു. കാരണം ഭഗത് സിംഗ് പഞ്ചാബ് ഗവർണർക്ക് കത്തയച്ചു ജയിലിൽ കിടന്നു. ആ കത്ത് എന്തായിരുന്നു എന്നറിയാമോ? എന്നെ തൂക്കിലേറ്റുകയല്ല ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്, രാഷ്ട്രീയ തടവുകാരനായ എന്നെ വെടിവെച്ചു കൊല്ലണം എന്നാവശ്യപ്പെട്ടുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഭഗത് സിംഗിന്റെ കത്ത്. ഭഗത് സിംഗിനെയാണ് നമുക്ക് ഓർമ്മ വരിക. എന്നെ കണ്ണുകെട്ടാതെ വെടിവെച്ചു കൊല്ലണം എന്ന് പറയുന്ന കുഞ്ഞഹമ്മദ് ഹാജിയെ വായിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് ഭഗത് സിംഗിനെയാണ് ഓർമ്മ വരിക. വാര്യംകുന്നത്ത് കുഞ്ഞഹമ്മദ് ഹാജിയും വെടിവെച്ച് കൊല്ലപ്പെട്ട് ഒരു ദശാബ്ദത്തിന് ശേഷമാണ് ഭഗത് സിംഗ് കഴിവിലേറ്റപ്പെടുന്നത്. ഇപ്പോഴെന്താ സ്ഥിതി? ഇപ്പോ മാപ്പിരുന്ന് മക്കയിലേക്ക് പോകാനുള്ള വാഗ്ദാനം തള്ളി രക്തസാക്ഷിത്വം സ്വയം ഏറ്റുവാങ്ങിയ വാര്യംകുന്നത്ത് കുഞ്ഞഹമ്മദ് ഹാജി ദേശവിരുദ്ധനും മാപ്പപേക്ഷ എഴുതിക്കൊടുത്ത് ജയിൽ മോചിതനായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരാൾ ദേശസ്നേഹിയുമായിട്ട് ചിത്രീകരിക്കപ്പെടുന്ന ചരിത്രം തലകുത്തി നിൽക്കുന്ന കാലത്താണ് നാം ജീവിക്കുന്നത്. അതാണ് ഞാൻ തുടക്കത്തിൽ പറഞ്ഞത്.
The BJP, viewers, is up in arms, demanding an apology for the insult and decrying attempts to whitewash a massacre. That's right, viewers. The BJP believes that this was a massacre, no less, of innocent Hindus and was carried out with devastating effect and then repackaged by leftist historians as some sort of great mutiny for the cause. And they are claiming, the BJP today, that the whitewash continues only because of vote bank politics. It's a serious charge, but viewers, it contextualizes what the BJP believes is the reluctance on part of the left, and in this case, of course, very figuratively, the communists in Kerala. Listen to this. Listen to what the BJP has to say.
Everybody knows Malabar, that Moplah revolt was a revolt against feudalists and British rulers. Government is raising this issue. It is to communalize the whole situation.
There is a communist government here which wants to celebrate Moplah Rebellion in a totally different form. We shall not allow any space forces that seek to divide our country, create violence in this country, whether it is Kashmir or Kerala.
Is historically incorrect and unfair because it was not a Hindu-Muslim conflict. It was, as I said, it was a reaction against the British.
Variamkunnath Kunhamed Haji, who was one among the people who had led the 1921 genocide of Malabar in Kerala. As the Malabar genocide was nothing but a planned attack on the Hindus where nearly 10,000 of them had died.
Now viewers, contrast this to the views of the Indian Historical Panel, which is of course maintained by the center, it's run by the center. Now what does the ICHR tell us? Let's go through each of these graphics that we're going to put out on the air for you so you and I can read this together. First of all, the panel, the ICHR panel comes out and says that the 1921 Malabar Rebellion was against Hindu society. Rebellion was an attempt to establish a caliphate, remove Malabar Rebellion leaders from book on Martyrs. So this is a very key ICHR recommendation. Almost all Moplah outrages were communal in nature. So this was not some big rebellion against the British. It was targeting attack against one particular community. The rebellion was an attempt to establish a caliphate. The rioters did not even spare the secular Muslims. Hence, Moplah rioters cannot be treated as martyrs. In fact, viewers, C.I. Isaac, member of the Indian Council of Historical Research, spoke to us, and this is really what he said.
Subcommittee verifies the entire my reports, and on the basis they put up a report.
Okay.
That report was submitted to ICHR in field cover. I asked them after preliminary inquiry was conducted, verification was conducted by me, and on the basis of my report, my findings, my findings I submitted. In these findings, the whole Moplah riots should be removed from the Freedom Fighters Dictionary.
Okay.
That is my suggestion.
Now, viewers, I want us to focus on what B.R. Ambedkar had to say about this particular incident. He said the aim of the Moplah rebellion was to establish a kingdom of Islam. Treatment accorded by Moplahs to Hindus of Malabar was baffling. Massacres, forcible conversions, desecration of temples common, and outrages such as ripping open pregnant women perpetrated freely. Annie Besant, then the president of the Indian National Congress, said the Moplah murdered and plundered abundantly. They killed or drove away all Hindus who wouldn't apostatize. About 1 lakh driven from their homes, stripped of everything. C. Gopalan Nair, then deputy collector of the area, author the Malabar Rebellion of 1921, said Haji, an outlaw who played a key role in the rebellion. Murders, forced conversions and dacoities were normal. Outrages on Hindu women became order of the day. Vinod Damodar Savarkar came out and said the Moplah Rebellion was an anti-Hindu genocide. Now, viewers, let's open this up. Let's get a bit of historical perspective into this. Why should, as we are pointing out, why should we, at any level, worry about exposing the designs of Islamists? And how can you suggest that exposing the designs of Islamists is intolerant, is communal, is against secularism, and it's against perhaps even the thread of the historical account that we have been passed down? There is always, viewers, truth, and then hopefully there is revisionism. And once the truth is established, the record must be set straight. So let's first open this up, and let me ask Mr. Ram Madhav, a very senior member of the RSS, Mr. Ram Madhav, how do you respond to the charge that this is a very clever sleight of hand on the part of the government at the center, the NDA, to rewrite history, to give it a saffron tint, and most importantly, I can only use the word that is being used by some of these leftists, which is it reflects a Taliban mindset. Can you respond?
No, firstly, where is RSS or BJP in the picture in all this? Everything that you have quoted from was either from the Congress records or from the historical records or from the British records, and which you have not quoted was the contemporary media which was there in Chennai, those days Madras and Calcutta. All that was said about the Moplahs and the rebellion, their atrocities against Hindus and everything was from the contemporary historical records, legal documents and everything. Now, we are only saying just don't try to whitewash that history. Let me tell you, RSS was not even born at that time. But you know the problem with the communists, for them, communalism they find only among the Hindus. Anything to do with Hindus is communalism for them. Everything else
I think we're having a few audio issues with Mr. Ram Madhav. We're going to try and rectify that. Let me bring in very quickly in the meantime, before we can set that line right, Dr. Ranganathan. Dr. Ranganathan, look, there is a massive controversy. We are reading accounts now that the Indian Council for Historical Research has decided to drop the names of 387 so-called Moplah martyrs from the Dictionary of Martyrs of India's freedom struggle. Now, obviously, there is a backlash, and many people are saying that this signifies the attempts being made by the Modi government to rewrite history in its own image. How do you respond to this?
No, good evening, Rahul. You know, to call the Moplah rebels as freedom fighters or martyrs is like calling the Taliban as freedom fighters and martyrs. And we know this, Rahul, don't we? That, you know, if the history were to be written by a few, many of them are in India right now, they would indeed call the Taliban as freedom fighters and martyrs. Look, the Moplah Rebellion was jihad by another name, an attempt to convert Darul Harb to Darul Islam. And no one understood this better than Dr. Ambedkar himself. A country which is ruled by a kafir, said Ambedkar, is Darul Harb to a Muslim. The basic feelings of deference and sympathy which predispose persons to obey the authority of government do not simply exist, unquote. In the Moplah Rebellion, it was Gandhi who pinched his nose and plunged into these murky waters of religious appeasement and terror. And it was Ambedkar who saw through Gandhi. And these records are not being unearthed right now, Rahul. They are 100 years old. The pity is all our successive governments have airbrushed them. So all these instances of quotes of Ambedkar and Gandhi are 100 years old. They exist. It's the fact that Indians have not been made to read them. The Muslims, he said, preached the doctrine that India under the British government was Darul Harab. I'm quoting Ambedkar now from his work. The aim was to establish the kingdom of Islam. Roads were blocked, telegraph lines cut, the railway destroyed in a number of places. Khilafat flags were flown, the Ernad and Valurana were declared Khilafat kingdoms. The Hindus were visited by a dire fate at the hands of the Moplahs, massacres, forcible conversions, desecration of temples, foul outrages upon women, such as ripping open pregnant women, pillage, arson and destruction. In short, all the accompaniments of brutal and unrestrained barbarism were perpetrated freely by the Moplahs upon the Hindus until such time as troops could be hurried to the task of restoring order through a difficult and extensive tract of the country. This was not a Hindu-Muslim riot, this was a massacre, unquote. To Ambedkar's horror, Gandhi laid the blame squarely on the Hindus. Hindus, he said, must find out the causes of Moplah fanaticism, agreeing that it was fanaticism. They will find that they are not without blame. They have hitherto not cared for the Moplahs, unquote. And Muslim leaders themselves agreed with Ambedkar, Rahul, that this was jihad. Maulana Hasrat Mohani, the eulogized freedom fighter and a friend of the Mahatma, and the one who had coined the slogan Inqilab Zindabad, justified the Moplah massacre of Hindus by saying this was Islamic jihad and that according to the rules of jihad, those who help the enemy, i.e. the British, become enemies themselves. Shockingly, Gandhi was conciliatory towards the Maulana. Fourth, there is no greater nationalist nor a greater lover of Hindu-Muslim unity than the Maulana, he said. Even though, said Gandhi, it is more necessary for a Hindu to love the Moplah and the Muslim more when the latter is likely to injure him or has already injured him. Why should a single Hindu have run away on account of the Moplah's atrocities, unquote? This was sheer lunacy, Rahul, just 10 seconds. The Mahatma was beseeching the Hindus to hold their ground even as they were being hunted down and butchered. Honestly, Rahul, I'm telling you, we have paid such a heavy price for ignoring Ambedkar and eulogizing Mahatma Gandhi.
Well, that's one very interesting perspective, and I can tell you that, viewers, whatever Dr. Ranganathan has said is documented fact. You can please go and check books and other quotes, articles written by Mahatma Gandhi and his pronouncements on the Moplah so-called rebellion. So please, all of this is not some figment of anyone's imagination. This is very well documented. But let me still go back to Mr. Ram Madhav. We lost you there. Mr. Ram Madhav, the central charge is revisionism, a Taliban mindset, a recreation in a saffron view of the world of our history. You need to respond to that.
Yes, first of all, this whole question of revisionism by BJP, RSS, etc. is totally ridiculous, because whatever you have quoted all the while, right from the beginning, was from the British records, from the Congress records, from the what you have not quoted was also from the then media in Madras, in Calcutta. They all had detailed accounts of the Moplah atrocities against the Hindus of those two taluks. So first of all, we should not call it as some kind of a thing that the present government is doing. Actually, the problem is the whitewashing is the habit of the communists. Until 1970s, Moplahs were generally regarded in history as people who were responsible for huge disturbances. The size of it, everybody had different views. I mean, we should not unnecessarily make it into Ambedkar versus Gandhi here when we are discussing about the Moplahs and their atrocities. What is more important is that as Ambedkar, Anib Besant, many others and media have highlighted it as an atrocity, and that was the understanding until 1970s. Till the great Namudripad, the communist government, declared all those Moplah warriors as freedom fighters. That is when this whole business came into picture, that even Mr. Kunhamed Haji has become a freedom fighter. What ICHR is now trying to do is to actually restore the real history. Okay. And I tell you, whitewashing history is not new to communists. If you go to Russia today, you say that Stalin entered the war, Second World War in 1939, you will be jailed. They will say that they only entered in 1941 because that doesn't suit them between 39 and 41. So this is the habit of the left. They distort the history. That's what they did, which is being corrected by ICHR now.
Okay, let me bring in Suneet Chopra. Suneet Chopra, what's the problem? History needs to be revised if the facts present themselves in a particular manner and they're unimpeachable. What is wrong?
My point is, you can bring new facts in and put them forward before the others and blend the process. He should be talking of Kumaranasan's famous story Duravasta and play. It shows you that it was an uprising against A, the British, and B, for the Khilafat. And you can see very clearly that when you are fighting a national liberation movement, there are many forms of struggles that come up. And you should read the assessment by M.N. Roy to the Communist International about this struggle, and later of Rajani Palmdutt in his famous book, India Today. This is not something that was done overnight.
But Mr. Chopra, you said a national liberation movement. For whom? By whom? And you even used the word Khilafat. So
it was the national liberation movement by different sections of the Indian people.
A group
and this
of
was against the landlords
Islamist caliphate, and you're okay with that. And you call that a mutiny against the British?
For these leftists, Kerala may have had a presidential form of government under the Diwan of Travancore.
No, one second. Look, you yourself have just said...
This is the truth of history.
Okay.
For history, we have to
know. I am just putting things together. I say if you are talking of Ambedkar and Gandhi, there is also Kumaran and Durvasta. There is also Rajani Palmadat.
Okay, listen to Mr. Madhav.
Emil Roy.
Listen to Ram Madhav once.
Far more.
Okay, one second. Look, again, one second. One second. Let's just bring in Mr. Ram Madhav. He's quoting a whole different section of the intelligentsia, Mr. Ram Madhav, a large number of other people who have a different take. Reconcile that with this, he says. What's the big deal?
Problem, Rahul, is that against this historical documentation, what is being offered to us was a play written by a fiction, written by some author as an authentic piece of evidence, or Rajani Palmadat's narrative, who is a known communist author.
And he is a Hindu.
That's what we have been saying. Sir, I have not disturbed.
Mr. Chopra, don't speak over people. He didn't interrupt you, please.
Why are you interrupting? I have not interrupted.
He didn't interrupt you. Please, silence. Silence is not acceptable. Please.
When I have not interrupted.
Please. Yes.
I have not interrupted, gentlemen.
Yes.
Don't interrupt me.
Yes. Okay.
You don't have any facts. You are a communist apologist. You are telling us about history. I tell you, sir, I may ask this gentleman, does he agree that there are enough number of fanatics in Kerala? There have been fanatics in Kerala who believed in killing and, converting kafirs as a way to take them to heaven. Does he agree with that? Why I am saying this was not my statement. This was the statement.
This is the problem with communists. They don't even know their own history. Forget about India's history.
Okay.
They don't even know their own history.
Look,
we
viewers.
know our history better than you know Indian
Okay,
history.
gentlemen.
You know Chinese history, no doubt about it.
Okay.
You know your nation's history, you know.
Well,
no doubt.
Well, I just want to say, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, the communists eliminated intellectuals from Pol Pot's Cambodia. Okay, please. Okay, sir, please, no heckling. Please don't heckle me. Please, I don't like it. I don't think our viewers like it either when people speak over each other. I don't blame the lack of historical detail on the left side of the fence, because for very long, when they have come to power in certain countries, they have completely eviscerated the intelligentsia, the history books. They will turn, what to say? They will turn everything on its head. They will remove buildings, viewers, which once stood from Cambodia to Tiananmen Square to the Kremlin. Churches, living repositories of both ecclesiastical history as well as religious history were removed, eviscerated. Everything was completely flattened out. And when people spoke against them, historians, they were also flattened out and buried in mass graves. This is the tradition. So there is a problem here, viewers. And if someone is quoting intellectuals that the left today quotes to promote a particular kind of politics, and if they don't like it, they will say, I'm sorry, you must put him in the right context. Viewers, this is the problem in our country. Revisionism is also selective, viewers. I'll leave it at this. I've run out of time. I'll leave it at this.